Thank you so much, everyone. Now we'll move on to our next session, which is Pillars of Modern Day Geoeconomics Strategic Connectivity Projects. And I would like to invite Professor Harsh Vipan sir to be the session chair. So first of all, welcome Professor Pant, and just to briefly introduce him, he is the Vice President, Studies and Foreign Policy at Observer Research Foundation, New Delhi. He is a Professor of International Relations with King's India Institute at King's College London. Professor Pant has been a visiting fellow at the Center for the Advanced Study of India, University of Pennsylvania, and a visiting scholar at the Center of International Peace and Security Studies, McGill University. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. It's all over to you. And a humble request to all of you. Whosoever wants to ask questions, you're more than welcome, but just keep it precise and short. It's a small request from my side. Thank you so much. Over to you, Professor Pant.
Thank you. I think we will keep it short and sweet so that we can have some evening time to ourselves, where we can enjoy more than just geopolitics. But thank you. These post-lunch sessions are always difficult. We are all well fed and we want to digest the food, so we all want to have a light nap. But I guess we have to talk about geoeconomics. We have been hearing about geopolitics all day in every session, because everything is related to geopolitics and geopoliticization of perhaps everything that we talk about in international relations these days is a reality with which we live. But let me first just invite all of my panelists to be on the floor. Dr. Benjamin Pogosyan, Mr. Gaur Sarukyan, Dr. Oshrit Bidwatkar, Dr. Gulshan Sachdeva. I hope they are all here. Gulshan, I think.
He was having lunch.
He's come. I got a bit worried that, you know, it's okay not to have an audience, but not to have the panelists is a bit of a problem. But thank you so much. We have Dr. Sachdeva also. And this panel, we do want to disentangle some of the discussions that I think all of us are having with ourselves, among nations, about the future of globalization. And one of the most interesting aspects of contemporary globalization is this focus on connectivity. Because I think what the Chinese did, perhaps inadvertently, by bringing BRI into focus, is to wake the world up that without connectivity and infrastructure connectivity, we are not going to see the next phase of globalization spread. And in their own ways, they awakened this debate, and they pushed a lot of us to think about how the next phase of globalization would look like. Now, in the process, perhaps there has been a lot of geopolitics entangled with the idea of how do you think about connectivity, how do you think of the next phase of globalization. But I think in some ways, the grand strategic projects, connectivity projects that we have announced that are in the pipeline, that big countries, important countries are talking about to bring in a lot of the important countries that perhaps find themselves out of the globalization framework. That process has begun. In some ways, it's a challenge for everyone, including China, including the West, including India. How do we connect, and how do we ensure that connectivity with those parts of the world which perhaps are important but are not well connected to the global economic story? How do we ensure that there is transparency, there is accountability, there is sustainability, both financial and environmental? But largely, I think what we are looking at when we think of these projects is how increasingly geopolitical the discourse and the operationalization of these projects have become. And this panel will discuss some of those projects. We have, of course, an important perspective from Armenia, which we'll bring to the table. And we have then we will talk about Middle East, where we are talking about IMEC, we are talking about INSTC in central, in the heartland of the world. And we will bring Indian perspective to bear by Dr. Sachdeva. But let me start by giving the floor to Mr. Sarukyan for his initial remarks, because he has a PowerPoint presentation. So if you can go first, and then we can open this up.
Thank you.
Honorable Chair, distinguished panelists, dear ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure being here. I would like to thank the India's Ministry of External Affairs and the Usanas Foundation for this opportunity to present the Armenia's government initiative. I would like to ask to display the presentation, please. There it is. The Crossroads of Peace project is an ambitious project to transform our region into a hub of connectivity, cooperation, and economic growth. The Crossroads of Peace is a strategic infrastructure project that envisions of reopening borders and modernization of all infrastructure in the region. This initiative arose based on two key factors. First is the need to open Armenia-Azerbaijan and Armenia-Turkey borders. Second one is the global and regional growing demand for new transport links. These two factors, these two realities have shaped the vision for this project, which aimed at strengthening peace and stability in our region through economic cooperation and infrastructure integration. As many of you may know, the Armenia-Azerbaijan and Armenia-Turkey borders remain closed by now. None of the infrastructure once operated in the Soviet era is now functional, and the Armenian government, without delving into the past conflicts, is proposing to reopen all these borders and revitalize the infrastructures. Armenia is prioritizing the restoration of previously functional railway lines. This will not only reconnect the infrastructure of our region's countries, but also it will allow to position the South Caucasus as a transit hub between east and west, north and south. Additionally, Armenia is proposing to integrate Armenia's, Turkey's and Azerbaijan's road networks to further reduce the transportation costs for various trade routes. In this regard, one crucial project is the Armenia's North-South Highway, which is under construction. This highway is being built to international standards and will provide a high-quality transport link from the Iranian border to Georgia. Once completed, the goods and passengers will be able to travel from Iran to Georgia and vice versa in just 6-7 hours, which is twice as less than now. Furthermore, under the Crossroads of Peace initiative, Armenian government is proposing a short and efficient connection for Azerbaijan to be connected with its western exclave Nakhichevan and with Turkey. Importantly, Armenia envisions facilitating smooth transit through its territory while ensuring full adherence to each country's legislation. This means that all transport operations should fully respect the sovereignty and jurisdiction of each country where they happen, and there should be no exterritorial infrastructure arrangements. Now, how this initiative is feasible given the current realities of our region? Of course, challenges remain. One of the key concerns rises around Azerbaijan's expectations about crossing Armenian territory. Specifically, Azerbaijan has expressed desire for its goods and passengers to bypass security and customs inspections while crossing Armenian territory. However, it contradicts international practice and Armenian legislation. This remains the main issue while this initiative isn't completed entirely. At this point, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that, as I said, Armenia envisions facilitating smooth transit through its territory, but it doesn't mean that Armenia intends to entirely waive all security and customs controlled procedures. Despite these obstacles, the feasibility of this project continues to inspire optimism. Just recently, Armenia and Azerbaijan have made a significant progress in their peace negotiation process, and they have agreed almost 90% of the proposed peace treaty. Out of 17 provisions, 15 have already been agreed upon, and the negotiations are continued on the remaining 2 points. Additionally, Armenia and Azerbaijan successfully completed of delimitation of one small part of their border, one small but very important part, and they agreed to continue their efforts on along the entire border. At the same time, Armenia and Turkey have been holding negotiations on reopening borders and integrating infrastructures with official meetings at both the leadership level and technical level. The discussions are ongoing not only regarding the railways, roads, but also regarding railways, which is very important. More broadly, India and Iran have officially expressed their support for this initiative. Turkey has responded positively, and Azerbaijan, while not fully confirmed it yet, but it hasn't rejected the concept. Generally, we can say that the Crossroads of Peace initiative aligns with international infrastructure strategies, including the international North-South transport corridor and the India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor. This means that international stakeholders could have vested interest in its success. Armenia is committed to an open dialogue with its neighbors and with its international partners to make this concept a reality.
Thank you. Thank you. This was, I think, very effective overview of the project. I just, before I go to Benjamin for his comments from the civil society perspective on this, I just had a question because you interestingly mentioned two aspects. One, that you hoped that the project itself would alleviate some of the regional problems. And then you said that the main problem between Armenia and Azerbaijan is very close to resolution. So I just wanted to understand whether the geopolitics is going to precede the geoeconomic benefits you're going to get out of it, or is it the other way around? How do you see the causality here? Do you see that because you have this project, you are being pushed to resolve some of those challenges, or because the challenges are being resolved, you have this project in place?
Well, indeed, infrastructures has always... I'm sorry? Oh. Indeed, infrastructures has always been more than just roads and railways. It is a bridge between nations, a pathway to economic opportunity, and a foundation for peace. So how exactly can this initiative contribute to peace and stability in our region? I can say that we believe that first thing is building an economic interdependence. History has shown that trade fosters stability. When countries are economically linked, they have stronger incentive to maintain this peaceful cooperation. Second thing is fostering dialogue and cooperation between countries. Infrastructure projects require coordination between nations and states. The process of planning, implementing and maintaining these connections encourages diplomatic engagement, trust building, long-term cooperation. Well, there are historical precedents. For example, the European Union began as an economic project focused on coal and steel, and then it rose to something bigger. So why can't we do the same? And the last but not least, the third thing is enhancing security through predictability. When infrastructure is properly managed and transparent, it helps to prevent smuggling and any kind of unauthorized military movement. The Crossroads of Peace suggests all countries to control their own borders while ensuring legal and safe transit through it. Of course, peace cannot be achieved overnight. It requires commitment, negotiation, and trust. But the first crucial step is connectivity.
So Benjamin, from looking, I mean, this is an insider's perspective on what is going on. Looking outside in, are you as optimistic as Gore is about the project and about the possibility that it would alleviate the regional geopolitical issues that Armenia faces?
Thank you, Professor, and again it's a pleasure to be here. I will start a little bit shifting the topic from the Crossroads of Peace to another connectivity project, which was probably most discussed in the last 25 years, when initially India, Russia and Iran signed the agreement, now I may say famous agreement, to launch international north-south transport corridor back in 2000. And at that time, the two destinations of this corridor, first was India, and second, the corridor should reach Europe via Iran, Russia, Northern Europe. So the idea was that India-Europe trade is going to increase, so India needed alternative routes to reach Europe, alternatives to Suez Channel. And at that time, Armenia was not officially part of these discussions. Then Armenia also joined, approximately 10 years ago, to this international north-south transport corridor along, I guess, 13 or 14 countries. But Armenian chances to be part of this corridor started to increase after February 2022. When Russia-Ukraine war started, it became clear that it's, let's say, complicated to bring any transit cargo to Northern Europe via Russia. So starting from 2022, what we see, also what we hear from our Indian, Iranian and Russian colleagues, the original INSTC, which was supposed to connect India with Europe via Iran and Russia, now there are a lot of discussions that INSTC should connect India with Russia. So the terminus of the corridor became Russia, and there are different routes how to reach Russia. Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, Iran directly via Caspian Sea, Russia, or you can use the eastern route, I mean Iran, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan and Russia. But our understanding is that India still needed alternative routes to reach Europe. And definitely given the India's economic rise, and now we all understand, and also we discussed here, that India is now the quickest development big economy in the world. Like if China's economic growth is 5% annually, recently India is 6-7%, and most probably a few years from now, India, at least from nominal GDP point, will be the third country in the world. Which means that India-Europe trade will grow, and which means as back in 2000, and even more now in 2025, India needs alternative routes to reach Europe. One of these alternative routes, and I guess we are going to discuss this also in this panel, it was announced, or the draft or plan or idea was announced in September 2023. I mean IMEC, India, Middle East, Europe corridor. Of course, there were a lot of developments in Middle East starting from October 7, 2023, which we also discussed in previous panel. But this, of course, could be an alternative. But what of course, I'm not an expert on cargo or on transportation, but what I understand in geoeconomics, that many alternatives, they are not making obstacles to each other, they are not hindering each other, they are creating more opportunities. So, what Armenia can do in this situation? Starting from 2022, Armenia came up with ideas that Armenia also can serve as one of the alternative routes to reach India with Europe. And I'm speaking about India, Iran, Armenia, Georgia, Black Sea, and then either Romania or Bulgaria, Burgas, Constanza, and you are reaching Europe. So now we have an opportunity in Armenia to be part of different transit projects, including connecting India with Europe. And this, by the way, Armenia may help INSTC to come back to its original idea. Because as I mentioned, in 2000, original INSTC was about connecting India with Europe. It was not only about connecting India with Russia. But due to what is happening between Russia and the West, connecting India with Europe via Russia is less possible. While one of the alternative routes to connect India with Europe could be India, Iran, Armenia, Georgia, Black Sea, Europe route. And here we are connecting these two ideas with the crossroads of peace, because what is the crossroads of peace? Crossroads of peace, this project is the idea that, okay, Armenia is ready to provide its capacities, highways, railways, everything, for any country who would like to make transits via its territory. It could be north-south, or additional route of north-south to connect India with Europe. It could be east-west, connecting Azerbaijan with Turkey if Azerbaijan wants it. So, crossroads of peace effectively enables the idea that Armenia also can serve as a route to connect India with Europe via this Iran, Georgia, Black Sea. But what the key is that what Armenia is telling, okay, I am ready to become a transit country, I am ready to provide simplified procedures, simplified for everything, customs control, passport control, everything, but I'm not able to provide what Azerbaijan wants. What Azerbaijan wants, effectively, Azerbaijan wants, okay, I would use Armenian territory the same way as I'm using Azerbaijani territory. So they want to reach from Azerbaijan to Turkey via Armenia the same way as they are reaching from Azerbaijani point A into the inside Azerbaijan point B, like without anything. What they are wanting is de facto creating a Schengen zone in South Caucasus. Of course, maybe this is a good idea, but if we are speaking about creating Schengen zone in South Caucasus, first we should have at least diplomatic relations between countries. And this is a thing which is a little bit out of logic from Azerbaijani point of view, because they are effectively demanding from Armenia to create something like Schengen zone between Armenia and Azerbaijan, while there is even no diplomatic relations. So if we jump into geopolitics, but I don't want to jump into geopolitics because this is geoeconomic panel. If we are jumping into geopolitics, as far as Azerbaijan pursues its maximalist approaches, I'm not too much optimistic that Armenia-Azerbaijan peace agreement is coming. But even if there is no Armenia-Azerbaijan peace agreement, it does not mean that at least Armenia playing a role as one of the alternative routes connecting India with Europe via Iran, Georgia, and Black Sea cannot serve. And as Mr. Tsarukan mentioned, currently Armenia is actively implementing its homework. I'm speaking about developing infrastructure inside Armenia, especially in the southern Armenia, which is bordering Iran, which will allow us to facilitate the high volume of cargoes passing from Iran to Armenians and Georgians and Black Sea. Of course, the infrastructure development needs time, and I'm not saying that tomorrow or even 2 or 3 years from now Armenia will be able to handle this type of cargo transit. But in geoeconomics, we speak for decades, not for a few years. So there is nothing can create obstacles or prevent Armenia to playing this role from 5-7 years from now. So somewhere 2030, 2032, along with Suez Channel, probably along with IMEC. Also the route which will connect India with Europe again via Armenia may well play out. Thank you.
Thank you. And now that you have talked about IMEC, let me go to Ishrit for her comments on when you look at the whole project that was announced at the G20 summit in India. Since then, of course, much has happened. There has been, of course, the discussion earlier, the episode of October 7th, and its aftermath, and there is a sense of pessimism around IMEC, and nothing. I mean, not for good reasons. Nothing much has moved. Now, when you look at the possibility of the revival of the project, when you look at the kind of investments that perhaps the regional countries and the stakeholders are willing to make in that project, how optimistic are you that once things settle down, if in one way or another, that this project will continue to have the kind of resonance that perhaps it had at that summit when it was announced with great fanfare for good reasons, and the stakeholders' engagement was quite significant at that point in time. So how optimistic are you, or is this again a question that the geopolitical entanglements are so deep that it will be very difficult to come out with to have a project envisioned in the way perhaps the optimism of G20 summit in Delhi generated?
So there is no doubt that the events of October 7 and marked by the escalation in Gaza and the subsequent regional tension have contributed to the have strained, I would say, the trust and cooperation that is required for such initiative, connectivity projects such as the IMAC. The war and its aftermath definitely deepened the divisions between regional players, particularly between Israel and its neighboring states. And if you look at the war, it's the longest war in Israel history. Look at the number of players involved in this conflict, in this war. And of course, a prolonged war comes with, sometimes when you're in the middle of the war in the Middle East, I would say, so you will definitely cause some disruptions to trade, to development infrastructure, to the development infrastructure, and also to the most important, I think, is investor trust in these markets. And all of these are crucial for the success of the IMAC. Also, I believe that the public anger as well played a role when it comes to that. If we look what happened in the Arab world, in the Arab street, and we know that the Arab world, used the Palestinian issue as a mean to project its solidarity with the Arab community. And even though the government involved maybe held a different opinion, they were definitely aligned with what the public want. And they were under a lot of pressure to deprioritize projects with Israel at that time. If we look at it from a geopolitical perspective, from Israel perspective, so there is no doubt that the events, Israel ambitions to become her regional transportation hub have taken a hit by the event. I think the recent blow to this initiative happened few weeks before they signed the ceasefire agreement. UAE signed an MOU to fund a project, development road project with UAE, Qatar, and with Turkey, UAE, and Iraq. Basically, it's an alternative route, a trade route, basically a network of highways and railways connecting Asia and Europe to Iraq. And a few weeks ago, it signaled a waning confidence in Israel's ability to secure the IMAC success because of the continuation of the war in Gaza. In Hebrew, in our Jewish religion, we have a saying that everything happens for a reason. Actually, it comes from the Talmud, the source of the Jewish law, that basically everything happens for a reason and everything happens because God wants it to happen. So if we look at the situation now, I think in many ways the Middle East today is in a better place than it was on October 7th, or if it was then October 6th. Iran and its proxies are weaker than ever, if we look at the last 20 years. And I can tell you that what basically started as a massacre on the lawns of the kibbutzim might end up on the lawns of the White House, signing a historic peace agreement, a normalization agreement between the Jewish state, the only Jewish state, and the Sunni leader state, Saudi Arabia. And it's just not my mere optimism. We hear similar voices coming from the royal family, the Saudi royal family as well. When it comes to how we can build resilience to such, project, it's still a very volatile region. I personally believe that the fact that we have members such as the EU, such as the such as India, such as Italy, Greece. So these countries can act as a stabilizing forces for this corridor, for sure. I personally believe that the only way to secure that is invest in communities and make sure that the communities living across the corridor will have a tangible economic benefit out of it. And that's the best way to, if we think about smart ports, smart cities, engaging and connecting this whole IMEC project to the wider peace process, to the Palestinian cause, could actually be a good, solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And maybe Trump plan that everyone are mentioning it now. Maybe relocating for a few years while your house is under construction is actually a good idea. It's not a bad idea at all. You have to look at it from a different perspective. Another way to secure that is, I believe, besides investing in communities, is definitely still, because the vitality of the region, this corridor can be an alternative to the Suez Canal trade route. So knowing that the countries involved are actually having a war and proximity and some kind of hostility with Iran and its proxies, no doubt that this corridor will be exposed to terrorist attack, and enabled to make it a valid and alternative trade route to the Suez Canal. There's no doubt that countries should work together when it comes to border security and make sure that they will use the best AI-based system for border security, anything that requires to provide a secure trade route for the world and for the global supply chain. That's the comment.
Thank you, Arshad. I think it was interesting that the joint statement between Prime Minister Modi and US President also mentions IMEC, and perhaps that also shows that there is resonance in some of the key stakeholders there still, which may take time to manifest itself, but certainly the logic of IMEC continues to prevail. I will come to Dr. Sachdeva now. Gulshan, if you can talk perhaps about the Indian experience with connectivity projects. Both, we have touched upon so many of them here, INSTC and IMEC being two of them. India's approach to them and India's engagement with these projects, how successful you see them from an Indian vantage point, and have we been able to successfully penetrate those?
And another point from where you actually started this discussion, if one is looking this phase of globalization for the next 15, 20 years, this is going to be decided by connectivities. And that's the focus of this phase of globalization. Because there is too much focus, for obvious reasons, for the last couple of weeks on tariffs concerning trade. But the fact is that the tariffs all over the world are actually very low anyway. Look at Europe, average tariffs are about 2-3%. Chinese tariffs are about 5-6%. The same is true with large number of countries. India, yes, we have average tariffs about 12-13%. Now, as a result of this, the push from the Trump administration, maybe some of the countries will actually lower their tariffs further. This is happening in India. It can happen in many other countries as well. So as in fact, the Chinese friend mentioned in the morning, China today, about 130 to 140 countries are, the largest trading partner is China. The similar thing is happening with other countries. Now, once you have the trade tariffs, very little you can do. How do you really trade? Then the connectivity comes. And, so what has happened is somehow we have focused on Chinese BRI for obvious reasons for the last many years in India. But if you look at across, almost every important country in this region has its own connectivity plan or strategy or ambition, either individually or collectively with others. From Russia, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Turkey, Japan, Korea, India, Pakistan, I was in Afghanistan working on developing their regional economic and regional connectivity strategy there, worked there with them for 3 years. So every country has its own ideas what they want to do, individually or collectivity. And of course, going to Europe, starting from the 90s from Traseka program, then from the Europe-Asia connectivity, now you have all the global gateway projects. So trade has increased, you need connectivity, and there is a huge infrastructure deficit. In fact, by some numbers, by 2040, you need about 15 trillions of infrastructure investment globally, and a very huge part will happen in Asia and the Eurasian part. So even if under Chinese BRI, if you look at the numbers, I mean, different studies will tell you different numbers, but somewhere about 400, 500 billion to about $1 trillion by 25th, 26th. So the huge thing needs to be covered, and all other plans. Now, under the plan of the Europeans, they are planning to mobilize about a couple of $300 billion under their global gateway project. Similarly, when the Blue Dot Network, the Americans and others, they announced, they also want to mobilize a huge amount of money under those. They want to mobilize. The Chinese they are putting the money, others are trying to mobilize. So that's the difference. But the thing is that there is a deficit here. Now, the problem is that all these connectivity projects, they have two clear dimensions. One, you have the developmental aspect of this, and second is there is the geopolitical aspect of this. Now, if you are going to build a port, it's very useful for commercial reasons, but it can also be used for military purposes. Same is also for airports, same is also for many of the infrastructure projects. Now the question is, what do you really want to focus on? Unfortunately, huge part of debate within India on the Chinese BRI, we focus mainly to a large extent on the geopolitical aspect of the Chinese BRI for two reasons. One, because of the China-Pakistan economic corridor, because that's problematic. And the second thing, all the ports which are being built within the Indian Ocean, so maritime connectivity, maritime port things, also becoming very important within this. So now it's not just only individual countries. You look into the ASEAN, now since they have benefited both from Japan and also from China, so they want to play the central role. I mean, their idea is to connecting these connectivities through ASEAN. So they are looking toward this. Then similarly, we used to have our own multimodal transport within SAARC. Now, if you look at G7, you look at G20, now all of them, they have come out with their own ideas of responsible, effective infrastructure principles, etc. So it means the world is focused at all different forums. This is happening. Now, how do you really deal now these issues? You have heard something about what is happening in the INSTC. For the last many years, we have been talking about this. Started with India, Iran, and Russia, and now many other countries have joined. There are different routes, as we have mentioned. Similarly, now for the last 1 year, we have been talking about India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. Now, these are all promising. There is no harm in discussing all these possibilities because the trade is growing. But two aspects have to be kept in mind. And this is what is going to determine the fate of many of these projects. One, whether there is enough trade volumes behind those corridors. In fact, this is the problem we faced in the international North-South trade corridor. Because one of the major assumptions behind this project was that India-Russia trade, because Soviet Union used to be our #1 trading partner, we thought India-Russia trade will pick up. For many, many years, it just got stuck at 10 billion. Now in the last 2 years, because of the different geopolitical, different other reasons, because of oil trade, it's about 50, 60, 70 billion trade now. So the volumes have come back, but it's only imports. But still, there is something positive. That can re-energize some of the things actually what we were not able to do with the international North-South trade corridor. But there is another angle here because now both Russia and Iran are under sanctions. So how our companies, now if they want to really use some of those corridors, so they have an added dimension, added problem there. you have to deal with something else, with the insurance companies, etc., etc. But there is a possibility that some of the things can work because the governments are working on this. Now, it's the same thing is also with the IMAC thing. Now, IMAC to begin with, I think there is a very good thing because at least the trade volumes are already there. You see, I mean, India's trade with the Middle East is already quite high, and through that, if the connections are built within, and then there is a political relative stability, hopefully in the next 1 or 2 years, things can move in those directions. But then the crucial question will come, which all corridors will have to face. One, they have to compete with each other on mainly on freight basis, because if I'm if I'm sending my product to country A to country B, if I have 3 options, at the moment I'm using Suez Canal, if that is not, compared to that, if any of the option which you have given me, and you also must understand, because both of these INST as well as IMEC, these are not direct shipping routes. These are multimodal. So you have to, carry certain things, unload, use other, railroad systems, then do something. A lot of things happen in between. There's a lot of corruption in many of those countries. You have to do certain things. So all those things have to factor in. If still that is workable for me as a business, I will use. But as a country, I would like to have all these options available to me. Because in the long run, if something happens on one particular route, I must have the second option, I must have the third option available to us. So as a country, we will be working in all these 3 routes. Whenever things are possible, things will work. Which of the sectors, which of the routes it's going to work, it's going to work or it's not going to work, we'll continue to talk about it. But as a business, I'll have to see business people with them. I talked to all the shipping companies, etc. They said, all right, even if the INST route is all right, but I have to, my other things are already operational. But if I go by this, I have to open my office in Iran, I have to do something else. Whether those things are now economical for me or not, that the companies will decide. So, more and more options for India is always useful. We'll continue to work on this. And another thing is, another thing also I have realized, that when we focus too much on geopolitics, in fact, here, this is a discussion more on geopolitics, but in the long run, many of the things they don't work actually. Today, many of the people may talk about Chabar port and Gwadar port as a competing port. But in the long run, they become complementary ports because, ultimately, when we are building Chabar port, we are also using Chinese cranes to actually build those cranes. If China is an important trading partner there, Chinese will be using that port. So it's fine because as a business, if I'm actually investing my money in Chabar port, who is using, I don't care because I really need to get my money back as a profits there in that particular port. So in the long, and in fact, when I was working in Afghanistan, I looked at, when you look at, that point of time, we were also talking about the, new Silk Road strategy project. When the Americans were there, they wanted to link Central Asia with South Asia via Afghanistan. This was the major design. It also suited us, so we also worked with them. But one of the major flagship projects of the INSTC, the TAPI project, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India gas pipeline project. Despite all the problems between India and Pakistan, between Pakistan and Afghanistan, all kind of agreements which were required, they were there. Whether it was transit agreement, transit fees agreement, everything was done. What it didn't really happen, nobody was willing to put money behind that project. Americans never put any money behind that project. They only gave couple of $2 million basically to Asian Development Bank to have feasibility study of this, which they did. They said, yes, it can work. But now somebody has to build this pipeline, about $5 or $6 billion, which Americans never gave that money. So that project never took off. And that's the reason, in fact, in some of the projects, the BRI is working with the Chinese government is putting behind. And if one is looking one by one all these BRI projects, some of them are problematic, some of them will also become problems for China as well because they are the one who are putting money. But some of them are also quite successful, I find. So some of the countries are doing, whether it's a railway within Indonesia or something, port in in Greece or somewhere else. I mean, so one has to look, you know, the holistic picture of all these major corridors and all the infrastructure projects. And in the long run, my feeling is the kind of trade integration, kind of economic integration within this region is happening, you know, and the kind of infrastructure deficit we have. You know, many of these actually, they may look competing with each other, but actually they are going to complement with each other, and then only I think everybody is going to benefit. If China is building something in Southeast Asia or Central Asia, we should really look into this. How do we take advantage from the infrastructure which is being built? But if there are some specific project where there are geopolitical problems like China-Pakistan economic corridor, etc., that is a separate issue. But otherwise, I think the approach has to be very, very different. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think in some ways, Gulshan, you are addressing the dilemma that I think often these projects end up with, because ultimately they are, I mean, when you visualize them, and I think we heard the first intervention, was all about geoeconomics. It was an economic proposition being made to stakeholders that you invest here and you will get these returns. But in the end, when you, but on the other hand, when you end up into this quagmire of geopolitics, which will always come, because especially in this day and age when fragmentation is the order of the name of the game, then I think it becomes even more difficult to take some of these projects fruitfully forward. Now I know I want to end this on time, unlike some of the other sessions. So I will invite all your questions, interventions. Please be very brief, so that I can take at least 5 or 6 interventions, and I will allow the panelists their comments at the end. So please, whoever wants to come in and intervene, your comments, observations, questions, anything. Yes, I think at the back, and then I'll come in. Can someone, that mic be given, can this mic be given to her?
Hello. Hello, good afternoon. My question is to Sir. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your name to the last speaker. So actually, Sir, I thought that you were excluding the fact of the Pakistan economic corridor and the other, BRI initiatives that China is making to other parts of the world, especially in South and Southeast Asia. Only I feel the thing is that the CPEC is a problem area because we don't have good relations with Pakistan. But the others, in my view, you have kind of, you see them as some kind of investment because we have good relations with the others. So do you feel that that may turn to be a little problematic, considering that maybe that area also, maybe Indonesia or somewhere else, could, kind of backfire upon us just because we have good relations with those countries? Thank you.
When you talk of geostrategic economic corridors, then I think what we have learned, especially this area, what we now call the Middle East, or what the Americans call the Near East, whatever. For 4,000 years, we have seen that this area is the genesis of disruption, the economics of disruption. This is the area. In Egypt under the pharaohs, limited the trade on this side, monopolized on the other side with the Polynesians. They in turn had exclusive rights to trading with Greece, and that is how the world was divided. When the inheritors, the Roman Empire, were the first to actually open up the trade routes. And when the Roman Empire fell, we in India faced 200 years or more of recession because our handicrafts didn't have a market, which we lost the entire Mediterranean market. And then what the IMAC, which the lady was talking about, we first experimented it with across North Africa, where we built forts at one day's march, and thereby you have the Fula tribe, the Indian associates in every country from Eritrea to Senegal. But that is the legacy. The trade route didn't survive because our own assets started blackmailing us. Then next came the issue of caravans through Arabia, which is why Khadija was sponsored. Islam happened. And then once again, Emperor Akbar's time, Jodhabai was the architect of the sea trade between India and Arabia and beyond. Once again, we had sea pirates. So the question is primarily that it is the genetic orientation of this region to have disruption. This has now spread also with the immigration and other issues that we are talking about in Europe. The same genetic orientation of disruption of trade has also now taken over Europe. Is globalization with presumptions of just physical routings, is it possible without addressing it? Or as Gulshanji said, a lot of this is long-term planning, which eventually you end up aborting at some stage. So, will you please address that?
Professor, I am General Sudhakar. It's always a treat to listen to you, whether it is NDC or Staff College or Army War College. I have my perspective, if you allow me. First and foremost thing that we have learned as students of management, we put the template of cost-benefit analysis on anything that we decide. If there is an originality in the thought process, we always look at the end state. Will it generate profit? In what time frame? If the profit comes to us by the end of 21st century, will it be of any value? One. Second, is it an original, genuine project that we are initiated, be it IMEC or INSTC? Third point which comes to my mind is, today I am handling something which I cannot disclose. I am looking for the shortest connectivity with Armenia. I am unable to find. So if all these things put together, if I am able to find some solution which is in the larger interest of national interest of India, perhaps that would be my start point to put a tick mark. Second, if anything outside India, boundaries of India is contributing to the national interest of India or global stability and peace, perhaps that would take priority 2. And priority 3 is going to be something of very, very high end state objective that doesn't benefit me directly, maybe indirectly in the long run would benefit. So to summarize my narrative which I have asked, there are 3 questions essentially I'm asking. Is this project a cost-benefit project, given the time, resources and the waiting period we have to apply? 1. Number 2, as of today, I am looking for direct connectivity with Armenia. Is there any shortcut, since we have very esteemed and distinguished panelists sitting there on the podium? Will they be able to throw some light? And number 3, no matter what we talk, IMEC or no IMEC, the maritime transportation is the cheapest mode of transportation. It's an established fact world over. If I respect my memory and knowledge, 90% of the cargo in world today is transported through maritime. If that is an established fact, is it cost beneficial to go in for a project like this? Thank you so much.
Yes, I have two final interventions and then we'll come to the panelists.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just have a short question. You know, are we looking at these corridors, which I think is really a reflection of multipolarity or the multipolar world which is evolving in front of us? Are we looking at it holistically in terms of special economic zones, in terms of ports. Ports, of course, are part of it. But frankly, the economic engine which goes along with corridors, are we looking at that kind of production capacity along with corridors? And the second point is in terms of security of these corridors. Now, have we thought through how do we secure these corridors? And if so, what kind of partnerships can come into play? You know, probably you won't have one organization here like a NATO or, you know, a peacekeeping force, something like that. You'll have to probably be innovative here. Depending on each specific corridor, you might have different partners to come together to secure those. So have you thought that through as well, or there's a need to thinking the security dimension as well? Thank you.
It has been very enlightening discussion, but my point is very focused with India. In geoeconomics, how do we factor in and understand the huge and humongous inefficiencies, pilferage and wastage built in Indian system, right from the policy level to execution and the redressal. 40 years ago, Indian Prime Minister said that if we send 1 rupee, only 85 paisas reach the target. That means an inefficiency and pilferage of 85%. Now it has been significantly reduced maybe, but it is still plus 50%. So how do we factor in when we are talking India specific in the geoeconomics? Thank you very much.
I think we have all kinds of questions, some very broad and some very niche. So I'll give the floor to Gaurav if you want to go first. And I think especially if you can answer the question, direct connectivity between India
Yes,
and
it is very interesting question. Thank you. Unfortunately, the map is not displayed. If it is possible, I want to draw your attention. No, okay. If we can successfully integrate the railway connections between our region's countries, I mean Armenia, Azerbaijan and Turkey, we will be able to create a seamless and efficient railway connection from the Persian Gulf to the Black Sea, to the Caspian Sea and even to the Mediterranean Sea. By just restoring 2-kilometer railway segment near Armenian-Azerbaijan border, we will be to create a seamless railway connection. Yes, you can see it is behind us, but we can create this connection, and from the Chapar port, we will be able to transport our goods and even passengers through Iran, through Azerbaijan, Armenia and Georgia, directly linking to the Black Sea. With restoring a small part, just 6-kilometer part of railway near Armenia and Turkey border, we will be able to integrate Armenia's and Turkey's railway network, and it gives us an opportunity to connect the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea and even to Europe. Another one railway branch is the connection between Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea and to Russia. All of these railway connections can be restored in minimal cost, in just it demands just about $5-6 million, and it can be done in a few months. So we just need political will from actually the Azerbaijani side to implement this initiative.
Where is the India connect?
India should be connected by sea and to the Persian Gulf, to the Chapar port, and then we can continue.
So, but what is the advantage of to India if there is a connect between Armenia and Turkey? Because Turkey is a rival of ours. Whatever trade we are currently engaging with Armenia, Turkey will be a disruptor.
Well, I don't think that Armenia could be the final destination of India's export. So Armenia just can be a transit alternative for India to Russia, to Europe. I think that's it.
I want to say something regarding, you said what the cost and benefit and the pricing from the business perspective. I would say I have two comments. One of them is that this was a tough year for Israel economically because of the war. The war bill, according to some estimation, is about $12 billion. Someone needs to pay that. And during this year also, we felt the increase in the national debt, downgrade of Israel credit, ranking by international credit agencies, also increase in taxes. And Israelis are only now starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And this IMAC is an opportunity for Israel, also for economic growth, but also for its integration into the Middle East. This actually, and you said why, I think this connectivity project is a reflection of each country's foreign policy. If you look at it, India is promoting few of them. Israel is promoting one with the US. And in many ways, the last speaker mentioned something about the cost and benefit and how it's going to be profitable for business people. I think Israel value, what Israel brings to the picture is its tech sector, its technology sector. We can make this corridor the most efficient, even though it's, we have railway, we have roads, we have shipping, but through our technology, that includes logistics, logistic, so AI and supply chain management, cybersecurity, we can make that experience of one corridor so efficient. And in many ways, even though India is a member of the IMAC, we still are competing on India's attention, that India will want to use that corridor compared to the other one. So this is the value that Israel brings to the table, and in many ways that's supposed to make our corridor most efficient as
Thank you.
Just a few remarks. First, my colleague said how India can be connected with Armenia or via Armenia in case of Armenia, Azerbaijan and Armenia-Turkey normalization, but because no one knows when it will happen, currently you have only two options. First, it's reach Armenia by air. Unfortunately, no direct commercial flight, but cargo flights are there. So if there is a need to transport some cargo to Armenia, just plane taking off from Delhi, Mumbai and landing in Yerevan. Second, you are taking ship again from Mumbai, reaching Bandar Abbas, and then within 12-14 hours, you are entering Armenia via trucks by road. So this is currently, two options, via air or via sea, and then by trucks, multimodal transport corridors. And I think I have 30 seconds more. So regarding the corridors, I think countries should not only serve only as a transit capacity or just a route to be transited through, but also they can also add value in the transit if something is being produced. For example, if there is a corridor which connects 12 countries from A to B, final destinations, and nothing prevents a country, for example, third or fourth country, to produce also something and to put into the cargo and export. So this is not only to be simply a highway or a railroad which will pass through your country, but also you can produce, and for example, if some road goes via Armenia and let's reach, for example, France, yes, Armenia can be transit country very well, but also something can be produced in Armenia during these projects, like cargo train or whatever can come into Armenia, and then something can be added in Armenia and then continue this way up to where the final terminus of the corridor is. Thank you.
Well, there are a couple of questions, but in 2 minutes I'll try to answer a few of them. One is the first question you asked about, the China-Pakistan economic corridor and looking at others. Why I was trying to say that one has to look into, you have to kind of, open this whole of the Chinese BRI and how India is interacting or should interact with many of those things. China-Pakistan economic corridor, because obviously if sovereignty, territorial integrity issues, obviously there is no point of talking about those kind of projects. But At the same time, if you look at AIIB, which is one of the major funders of Chinese BRI, India is major recipient of that. In fact, large number, 50, I mean, if my memory is correct, something like 40 to 50% of the total funding from AIIB actually comes to India. So we are, because we feel that we are equal partner of that particular venture. And similarly, you know, what, Atul Aneja, you asked about, it's not just only about physical, I mean, only about shipping, etc. If one is talking about economic corridors, then in fact, in theory, we are talking about everything. We're talking about industrial corridors, we are talking about fiber optic, we are talking about many, many things. But to begin with, first the connectivity part has to be built, physical, certain connectivity, and then many other things will follow. Like if you look at China's BRI, I mean, to start with, it was linking Europe with China. So today, it's not just only about what is happening via sea, because certain products will go via sea only, because that's economical. But you also have roughly about 225 European cities are connected with Asian cities via railway. Close to 100,000 trains have already gone on those tracks by now. So that's the kind of things, you know, you are going to build later on. And yeah, so, you know, so these are the kind of things which you want to really have to look into this thing. Ultimately, it's a business. It's other thing you have to keep talking about. But what I was trying to make a point was that yes, we have to be concerned about geopolitical aspects of all the things which are happening, but that's not the only thing. You have to look at the thing in a such much bigger manner, because geopolitics will keep changing by the time many things will happen. At some few years back, Iran was out of sanctions. Now, you know, the sanctions are back. When we started North-South trade corridor, there was no problem with Russia, but still the trade corridor didn't take off. Then now the sanctions are there. After 2 years, we don't know what things are going to happen. In the meanwhile, India-Russia trade has gone up. Now, whether the trade with the energy trade with Europe will go back or not, you know, many dynamics will keep changing, but you have to keep following. At the meanwhile, India's trade has also gone up. Our ambitions have also gone up. But, you know, if we're taking too long, then of course, things are going in a very different direction. But within a reasonable time, the point you made, we have to build domestic capacities and also inefficiencies of the governance in building these infrastructure projects. If we are able to resolve them, I think many of those issues would be able to handle.
Thank you. As you can see, there are many issues here, including domestic and global. And I think one of the things that I want to end this conversation on is, in so many ways, India is criticized on connectivity, that we are laggards, we are late to the party, we have often not completed the projects. But I think on one issue we have been very prescient, and that was interestingly related to BRI, where we were the first to oppose BRI on the grounds of CPEC, but we also at that point highlighted the problems that might come in BRI, you know, financial sustainability, environmental sustainability, lack of regulatory frameworks, lack of capacity building inherent in the programs. And I think what the Chinese BRI 2.0 has done is to address some of those concerns. So while the Chinese are quick learners, we are also very good at pointing out problems. So I think you know, that's something that as we think of new corridors and as we think of you know, our engagement with the alternative resilience in the systems, something to think about as to what are the learnings here from our past experiences, perhaps that we can bring to bear on the new experiences. But thank you all. This has been a very good learning exercise for me and for everyone, I hope. Thank you, gentlemen.